All right, this is where we will end today with setting up our outputs, our physical outputs. So far we've seen that we've achieved multiple source input tracks. Going to our router, which has the routing ambisonic hack device that we're making here, this can receive up to 4 at the moment inputs. It can conceivably do, I think, up to 32 track inputs, but we've just got it set up for 4 stereo inputs, and it's also, due to the fact we're hacking an example, set up for 4 stereo outputs. Now, this is where things start to get a little bit experimental, and without having the hardware speakers here to exactly work out the result, we're going to have to make some inferences, but we're going to do our best. But also, currently, with the current device we've created, which embeds the Waves NX Ambisonics plugin and head tracker, we can already design our sound and design our set just in our headphones. This is these output routing that we're doing now is almost like just something you need at the very end when you're setting it up in a real space. Just to facilitate the use of our Waves plugin a little bit more, what I wanted to add, in which I forgot to add last time, on the Waves NX object here is just a message that says open, and then add that to, we could make it a Max for Live. Yeah, let's do that. So that's a message that says open, and then really what we want to keep the style nice is a live device. What type of device? Button? Text. That's what we want. Cool. When this button is pressed, it will send out a bang to open that. If we want to edit this, I didn't plan on doing this, but let's do it quickly. We're going to edit this button in the inspector. There should be options for how it operates. Currently, I think it's set to toggle type enumerate. No. Mode toggle. We just want it to be a button so that when we press open, it opens. So transitions from 0 to 1 when it gets pressed. So if we test that by just coming out into a message, we'll see that we essentially just get a bang, which is good because we want it to bang this message here. And then we want this to say open plugin. Text on and off label. Maybe the text off label will just be open Waves NX for now. Let's see what that looks like. And it just shortened it to open. Cool. I wonder if I can have open plugin just out of interest. There must be a length. Great, and you can see that it opens the plugin. So the plugin is running, of course, but it opens the UI on the user interface. Let's add this to the presentation, and then in presentation mode, place that somewhere useful. Maybe here for now. And then we could put a little comment in. C for comment. Oh no, let's reuse one of the ones that are already here. Let's do this one and just duplicate that. Pop that here. And we'll call this Waves NX Sonics. Oh, I can't even remember if that's exactly what it's called, but that should help. We move these down just a fraction. So now save, close the plugin, reopen it or relaunch it, reinstantiate it. Not only do we have the head tracker, which launches automatically, but now we can open the plugin UI as well, just to set things like the sweet spot, etc. Cool. Great. Let's continue editing. We need to set those outputs. All right. So out of presentation mode. So that was working. Interestingly, having this plugin output here. We could really just disable all of this. But I'll just leave it for now because I want to do as little as possible. But as a reminder, we took the plug out object that was down here as part of this demo patch and just moved it over here. This is also going to... Now this is where things kind of get interesting, because if we want this to work with our headphones, which it is, that's working really well. What if we want it to work with 4 pairs of stereo outputs as well? Do we need to add an extra one? So 2 for our headphones for the main output that's going to the master, and then 3 or 4 sets of stereo here. This is what we've got to work out. So I'm going to try that. So instead of having 1 to 8, we're going to need 1 to 10. Because these first 2 we'll be using for our headphone outputs for our ambisonic setup. And then, because this could be useful even in the long run, so you can test it on headphones or check things in headphones whilst you've got the full speakers set up. And then we're going to have these. So this is going to be our first pair of outputs, second, third, and fourth. And what I said was we basically just needed to come out of our ambi decode into these outputs on the device, replacing this DAC. So let's do that. Delete the DAC. We can bring this down here if we like. Just to kind of visually make sense of all of this. So now, with our ambi decode, again, the arguments are how many sets of B format ambisonic inputs are we getting? Well, just 1. And then we can decode that to as many speakers as we want. And again, everyone's been working on using 8 speakers, so we'll set that to 8. So now we can see we have the 4 inputs for 1 set of ambisonic B format audio, and then the 8 outputs representing our 8 different speakers. I'm not sure which 8 speakers it's referring to, and I think that's got to do with this speaker set, and that's why I copied this before. If we look inside this speaker set, if we just have a detailed look at it, this is plugged into the first one. So that says to me, this has got more to do with how you position your speakers when you set them up in the real world. But this says to me, and I don't know if this is what we want or not, but these 2, this is set at minus, and I'm assuming these are azimuth values because you can see it's the 3rd inlet in this pack. So azimuth, elevation, and distance. So the azimuth would be minus 22.5, which is just a bit to the left, so like here. And then this one is 22.5, which is there. The next one would be that would be the first one there, minus. So this is speaker 1. Aha. Speaker 2 at 22. 67.5 is here, speaker 3. 112.5, speaker 4. And then 5 would be 157. 6 would be minus 157 here, minus 112, and minus 67. Fantastic. So that says when we set up our speakers, we're going to imagine that our first stereo pair will be here. This is our second stereo pair. This is our third stereo pair, and this is our fourth stereo pair. Alrighty. That wasn't too hard to work out. So our first stereo pair, or the first 2 outputs on this ambi decode, because remember this speaker setup is being sent to the ambi decode here. So it's referring to this. Are going to go like that. And that's going to be outputs from our device, outputs 3 and 4, but they are going to be plugged into, when we set up our speakers, the top left speaker, speaker 1, and top right, and so on. So this is these 2 here. So the fact that the audio gets sent in live as stereo pairs is going to work totally fine for us, I believe. Again, we'll have to check this on the day, and maybe check with Roger too, but I think this is going to work nicely. And this is going to allow us to monitor, hopefully, our plug-in binaural version, outputs 1 and 2 from the plugin, which I believe automatically go to the master. We'll check that. And then these will be accessible from the other plugins, from the other tracks. Is this correct? Is this right? We will see. Because that's what these B patches do. They're going to hopefully allow us to route the audio that's going to here to certain places. What I've just realized though is that we have 4 sets of output B patches here, but now we have 5 sets of stereo outputs. So, do we need to change anything with that? We might need an extra one. How to test this? Let's just go from here because there's already 10 minutes. So far anyway, we've connected. We researched the speaker setup for our Ambi decoder and identified that if we use outputs 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, it'll represent this stereo pair, this stereo pair, this stereo pair, and this stereo pair. All right, save, close. The reason why I was wondering about these output tracks, or this output option here, is that because we said earlier that we're going to use these sends to send out, to receive the audio and send it out to our individual speakers. Notice that sends don't have an audio from option. They only have audio to, which means we need to send it from here, this audio output track here. That's what this is for. That means, sorry, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it, but that means that we'll either need an extra one of these because we're doing the complicated thing of trying to have a binaural headphone set up as well happening. Or my hope is that we can just assume, because notice that there's audio coming out of this track through to here, even though we have no output selected and our matrix is also off. That's good. So it's coming out 1 and 2. We can hear everything. Cool. So what that says to me is we need to reassign these B patches, and I'll show you how to do that. Might as well do it right now and make this a long one. Currently, these say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Because we said that 1 and 2 has been reserved for our binaural waves plugin, I want these to say 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, addressing the outputs, those outputs on the plug out tilde. And the way to do that is actually quite simple. Again, we're trying just to leave everything here and not change too much at the moment, and then delete stuff at the end if we can. But to change which outputs this browse routing utility, it's hidden back here, browse routing utility is addressing, what we need to do is select the B patcher, go to the inspector, and then make sure you've selected all. Down at the bottom patcher, we have two options here. We can choose the B patch that we're using, and a B patcher is a saved patch that exists on the hard drive, and we're using that patch within this patch. More on B patches another time, but this is set to audio inputs 1. And we can change that to say audio inputs 2, but I just realized we want to be addressing the output one, so down here. So I just clicked on this one down here, and I said I wanted to leave 1 and 2 untouched so that it just passed through the Waves plugin and out to our headphones, and then simply change this argument from outputs 1 to output 2, and we should see the numbers here change. Here we go. And then return. Yes, 3, 4. Fantastic. So I'm going to click on the next one and change this to output 3, 5, 6. Great. Because remember, it's thinking in pairs. So output pair 3, output pair 4, and the last one, output pair 5. Great. The reason why I want to do this again is just so I can do the minimal amount of change in here. So I think that's all we need to do. Save, close this patch, and then I'm going to reload it for good measure. It's talking the way it should. Set the distance of these to 1. Now we need to add a few more controls here for the other 2 inputs, so we can have 4 in total. But now we should be seeing that this is saying 3 and 4 here. So if we set these inputs again, the beauty of this stuff is that when you save this in your live set, you don't have to keep rerouting these. Turn off this, which will also be saved. So playing. These are not going anywhere, and it's simply passing through this router plugin to our master output, which my headphones are plugged into. And I can confirm that this is working because as I turn my head, I hear that in my right ear now, and I hear it in my left. So the binaural ambisonic panning is still working, which is great. And then if I wanted to, in addition, route these to real physical speakers, I could take, I'm going to set these outputs to, well, they'd be going to external outputs. And again, we'd have our 8 out audio interface here, and these would say 1, 2, and then this would say 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and set up in the room accordingly. And then we take the output of our ambipanner and pass that to this send, pass that to that send, that to that send, and that to that output. And now you should see these levels, even though we're not hearing anything because we don't have any speakers to route it to, as I pan this, and I'll just mute one of them. You should see this moving around the different sets of speakers. The amplitude shifting, it's more over here now. And remember, this output represented these 2 speakers over here, so you can see it's kind of loudest there, and then starting to come back in at the front pair. And all of this is just so that I can say to you with pretty good amount of confidence that I think this setup will translate pretty much perfectly. Great, I'll do one more wrap-up video that kind of finalizes all this stuff and adds those last 2 controllers for our other 4 audio sources. See you in the next one.